What is going on, you guys? My name is Matt, and this is a series dedicated about showing the coolest error cards that have been sold this week. And we have a lot of interesting cards to show, so let's get right into it. Kicking things off, we have a no rarity base set Venusaur. That is a Japanese card. And I'm also seeing right now that this also has the wrong number on the bottom. I am actually not familiar with the wrong number error. So yes, a Beckett 7.5, no rarity, and also has the wrong number. So you see this should be number 3, but it says number 066. And this card sold for a lot of money, $496.68. Average non-error price is $80. EVI, or error value increase, of 521%. That's a pretty good card. Also, Venusaur is my favorite Pokemon. Next up, we have a vengeful looking Meowth from Fates Collide, and this has an inverted back and also a miscut back. We've been seeing more and more cards that have the inverted back and miscut back, I assume from around the same set, and they seem to have that same miscut pattern, so that would assume that they were probably from the same sheet or same printing time. And my personal general rule of thumb is $50 for a modern card kind of gets it to that next tier. So you can see a sale price of $51 definitely gets it into that next echelon of cards. Average non-error price is $1.29, so that makes the error value increase 3,853%. And that is good enough for number 6 this week on our list of error value increases. Next up, we have a base set Gyarados with the square cut error, or also just known as not factory cut. So someone took an uncut sheet of Pokemon cards and cut them, so this was not cut by the factory. But this got graded by CGC and got a perfect 10. I'm always surprised when grading companies grade the not factory cut cards. I feel like there's too much variation in it and just different things to consider. But either way, this card sold for a lot of money. This was actually the number one sale we had this week. $1,799 for a Pokemon card. That's insane. Next up, we have a Clefable from Jungle Set, and this has that fat bottom miscut. And you can see that this card is perfectly centered from left to right, and even though it is shifted quite a bit up from the bottom, there is no alignment dot. So you need to kind of have it be shifted one way and another way too. It kind of has to be two-dimensional versus just up or down. And you know me, I always love those vintage errors, especially these miscuts. I think that's very unique. Especially, it seemed like the printing quality for a lot of these cards, they were better, and it was kind of hard to find crazy miscuts back in the day. And this miscut added a good amount of value to this card. The EVI is 881%. And the sale price is $116.50, and this is good enough for number 10 this week on our list of error value increases. Next up, we have a base set Charizard with the black dot error. If you look on the bottom of the card where it says Nintendo, there is a black dot, and also the hollow shift for this, the hollow portion of the card is shifted up. So you can see in the art box there, the bottom portion of it actually does not have hollow because that hollow is shifted up a little bit. And this combination of errors is known as the black dot Charizard, and this is a repeating error. So there are several other cards like this, and you know base set Charizards, those always sell for a lot of money. So a CGC 9 base set Charizard non-error version goes for around $1,000, but this one went for $1,700 this week. And an EVI of 67% doesn't sound like a lot, but that added $700 of value to this card, which I think is pretty incredible. And this was the second highest sale price we had this week of $1,700. Next up, we have a first edition Venonat from Jungle Symbol with the, what is it called? The golden line error. Just the line error. So the upper left border of the card, you can see what would that be, a golden line running down the inside of it. And this is actually a repeating error. And like some other errors of this type, some have, they range in severity. And this one seems like it's a little bit more on the severe side where the line is going all the way down. I've seen some where it's just a tiny little line, a couple millimeters long. I'm very shocked that a first edition Venonat from Jungle Symbol grade 9 non-average version goes for $13. And even with this error, grade 9, this only sold for $70 this week, which I think is low, but I guess it adds a pretty good EVI to the card, so maybe just overall the card's not worth that much. And I believe this is the first time we have seen this error pop up in the now 20 weeks I've been doing this show. Next up, we have a first edition Ivy Pikachu promo card. If you were unfamiliar with this error, this should not have the first edition stamp. I forget exactly how this ended up, but I think, yeah, it was only in the Jungle Booster packs where you could actually find this card. And boy, does it always sell for a lot of money. You can see in the CGC 8, this card sold for $660. And that gives the error value increase 4,300%. And that is good enough for number 5 this week on our list of EVI. Next up, we have an Ancient Mew promo card. Typically, if you see an Ancient Mew on the series that I do, it is because of the Nintendo error, where the third N in Nintendo is missing. But for this one, this is actually a fat bottom miscut. One thing to note, you can see on the front and back of the cards on the bottom, this card does not use alignment dots. It actually uses alignment pluses. So it's a little plus symbol on the bottom left of the card, and then you can see it on the bottom right of the back of the card. And this is just an interesting card to see miscut. I always do love seeing this. It's very unique. And this card sold for $95. Next up, we have a PSA 10, a perfect 10 base set Diglett with a rotated symbol error. On the line that says dig, so that fighting symbol is rotated 90 degrees to the left. And in a Gem Mint 10, this card sold for $100 this week. Next up, we have a couple of Gym Hero cards. We have a Brock's Geodude and an Erica's Bellsprout with a water obstruction error. So early on in the printing process, essentially, I believe there was a water spill when a certain color was getting added to the card, and that water blocked that color from getting added to the card, which left this kind of obviously flow-like, water-like pattern to be placed on these cards. And one could assume that these cards were actually next to each other on the uncut sheet, and it leaves everything looking lighter and a lot more yellow, I would say. Kind of a nice love story to see that these cards have been together their whole lives. Am I right? Yeah. And when calculating the error value increase for these cards, I added the value of both of the cards, so $1.59 and $1.56 for the non-error versions. And that leaves the error value increase of 8,630%, which is good enough for number 4 this week on our list of EVI. Next up, we have a base set War Turtle with the Evolution Box error. In the top left, where it says Stage 1, you should see a Squirtle there, but this is actually War Turtle. And this is one of my favorite repeating errors. And if you see this card show up in this show, it's almost guaranteed that's in the top 10 for EVI, and that holds true right now. So this card sold for $112.50 and had an error value increase of 1,025%. And that is good enough for number 9 this week. Oh, hey, look, another one, the PSA 9. And one interesting thing about this, the average error price for this card for a PSA 9 Evolution Box Error War Turtle is $399, so this sale price was only $4 off of that. And this error value increase was 1,075%, which is good enough for number 8 this week. Next up, we have a Dark Persian promo card with the no HP error. Obviously, the Dark Persian on the right, which is the error card, is missing 60 HP. And these cards are always known to have higher error value increases, especially one like this that is in better shape. This had a sale price of $175 this week. And I will let you be the judge. Here we have another no HP error Dark Persian, PSA 8, and this one sold for $135.50. So did this person get a heck of a bargain, or did the other person overpay, or both? Well, I'll tell you, I just looked it up. Looks like a grade 8 usually goes for $141 for this error, and the grade 9 goes for $849. So I think the population just must be that much lower for that. And so I think when you buy this card ungraded, you're hoping to get a grade 9 because that really does bump up the value very significantly. So yeah, overall, $135.50 for a PSA 8 sounds about right for this card. Next up, we have a base set Blastoise, and this is not a stage error. This is not a red dot error. This is not an illustrator error. This is just a fat bottom miscut. Just like that Clefable that I showed earlier, this one does not have an alignment dot. Again, so it's perfectly centered to right and has that fat bottom and that skinny top, and got graded a CGC 5. Now I think if there's an example of how busy I was this week, typically I like to show the back sides of a card, especially if it's a miscut. My apologies, but it looks like I just put the same card up there again, and I will be leaving it, so I guess if you want to go look up this card, you can. It's been a busy week. That's why this video is getting released on Sunday. But I wanted to make sure I get this video out for you guys. So if you are enjoying this series and you like me talking about these Pokemon cards and you just enjoy it in general, please consider subscribing. That would mean a lot to me. Thank you. Honestly, this miscut adds more value than a lot of the other errors that I mentioned before, though. There's 3 other repeating errors for base set Blastoises, and this one sold for $350, which is pretty darn good for a grade 5. Now this is going to be one of the first examples that I show of international cards that have very interesting errors. So here we have a Topps Golbat card, which is an Italian card, and you see the front looks pretty normal. It's actually very normal, but the back side you have a miscut Charizard on it. That is incredible. I have never seen this before. The next shocking thing is a CGC 5, so a grade 5 for the non-error version of this card, goes for $2. I know the cost to even get the card graded is far higher than that. And so with a high sale price of $202.50 and the average non-error price of $2, that gives us a 10,025% EVI, which is good enough for number 3 this week on our list. Next up, we have a pack of Paradox Rift cards with a misalignment error. This got graded a PSA 9, and this is just fascinating. I love how just how unique this looks. You really won't see anything else like this. I don't think there really is a reason to grade a modern pack of cards like this with PSA. I guess if you have your own personal reasons, you can. But one like this, I'm very glad that the seller did get it graded. Looks like about 1/3 of the pack is just shifted up or shifted down, whichever way. Be shifted down. Yeah, about 1/3. And I don't really have a non-error price to compare this to. I don't know. I couldn't find an example of a PSA 9 pack. So we're just going to appreciate it for what it is. And this pack sold for $150 this week. Next up, we have another example of a non-English card that has an error, and this is a Muck from Fossil set. And you can see that I actually put the non-error card as an English card. I really don't think it changes the comparison too much. And this card on the right has a insufficient black ink error. So you can see Evolved Grimer and Muck is all faded black. It's like more of a light gray, I would say, at this point. And this card sold for $34 this week. Next up, we have a PSA 8 First Edition Dragonair with the Rainbow Smear error. Now, this one is a repeating error, and under Slam, the attack, where it says number, there is a smudge over the U in number. And to be honest, this one doesn't really add too much value to this card. A First Edition Rare base set card is already going to sell for a lot, so you can see a non-error version of this card in a PSA 8 sells for $166, and this one sold for $200, so EVI is about 20%, and that seems about right for this error. Even though these don't show up too often, it just doesn't seem to add that much value to the card. And yes, as I have said, this card sold for $200. I always like showing these ones. CGC messed up. So here we have a CGC Pristine 10 Kingdra Pokemon card. This is a more of a vintage Japanese card, and just lovely artwork, everything about it. But CGC called it a Sea King, which is absolutely not right. You can see the non-error card. I put the Sea King from that set. Now, I could understand if they put this as Seadra and not Kingdra, but to put it as Sea King, that's kind of a little bit of a stretch, I would say. And due to CGC's error, this added 292% to the value of this card. This card sold for $240 this week. Thank you, CGC. Another example of a foreign card with a pretty cool error. This is definitely the coolest one we've seen so far. So here is a Stoutland V, which I have never heard of actually, but it is known as Bisbarck V, and this is a double printing error. The front of the card is about 50% opacity, along with, it looks like the back of a card is printed there as well, so they're, combined together. And then the back of the card is completely blank. It just has the hollow pattern on the back. Obviously a very unique card. I wouldn't say one of one, but probably pretty darn close due to how rare this is. I'd imagine that there are other cards with this exact error from this same sheet. And holy crap, a grade 9 for this card, non-error version, goes for $4. And this one sold for $938.69. That gives us an error value increase of 23,367%. And that is good enough for number 2 this week. And this is also the number 4 highest sale price with around $940. Next up, this one surprised me. We have a PSA 9 off-center error, which is a base set Charizard Japanese card. And I don't think this card is off-centered. Even after double-checking PSA's standard for what is considered an off-centered, I don't think that this is off-centered enough. It might be, I don't know, but that just kind of shocks me a little bit. Either way, it added about 47% to the value of this card, and it sold for $1,000 this week, which is the 3rd highest sale price. Next up, we have a Scyther from Jungle Set with an insufficient ink error. You can see the bottom middle of the card has a light blue effect to it, and this, I was able to figure out which obstruction this was for the ink error. Because there is a base set Venusaur that has his exact same error. Not the same spot, but it has that same lightness. And so that tells me that this is an obstruction on the yellow plate for printing. One other neat thing about this is actually a no symbol Scyther, so this is a double error. And considering that it is a double error, I think it could have maybe sold for more, maybe to the right buyer, but also, the card is not really in the best shape. You can see on the back of the card there is a lot of fraying and whitening around the edges of the card. And so, despite all of this, this card sold for $60 this week. Next up, we have a Topps Bulbasaur with a miscut. And I gotta say, I absolutely love Topps miscuts probably the most. It's just always very fascinating to see the contrast here. I believe this is actually the edge of a sheet. And so you can see the top of the card is just a straight gray foil there, and the back of the card has just a white portion with actually a little bit of a black line on it, so that does confirm that this is the edge of a sheet. And this card sold for $83 this week. Next up, we have a PSA 9 Shining Magikarp with the double hollow, and this is a variant. And for this one, you can tell it's a double hollow because there is a hollow portion actually shining through parts of Magikarp, and also the hollow kind of seems to swallow the smaller Magikarps that are on the hollow portion of the card. And this one sold for $690 this week, which is the 5th highest sale price. Next up, we have a sealed oddish promo card with a pretty significantly sized printer hickey. That is on the upper left portion of the art box there. And I don't think this is a repeating error. I guess it's kind of hard to tell for these newer cards. I know there is one card, I think it's from this set, or maybe it's from a different one. It has the gray border, but it is a War Turtle, and it has a repeating error that people know. So this could be a repeating error, I don't know. But this is very interesting. It's a good size, and obviously this one is also still in the packaging, so this is sealed. And this one sold for $30 this week. Typically goes for $2.38 for the non-error version. And that is good enough for number 7 this week, an error value increase of 1,161%. Number 7 this week on our list of EVI. Next up, we have a first edition Blissey from Neo Revelation, and this is a German card, and I believe this is a double hollow variant. Now, I was not aware of double hollow variants of other languages. I thought that was only in the English versions of the cards. This is the first version of this I have seen, and this card sold for $200 Canadian, which is $145.99. Next up, we have a Charmander from Team Rocket set, and this is the black dot error. Above the D in Charmander on the top of the card, there is that black dot that kind of is on the top of the D. And this is actually a repeating error. I don't believe there's an average error price for this card. You know, I think around $15 to $20 usually is about right for this. And so a sale price of $16 seems about on par for this. And to wrap things up this week, we have a Sparrow from Jungle Set, and this is no ordinary Sparrow. You can see the back of the card is a double printing error, and it actually has Dodrio on it. Looks like the back of the card is about 60% opacity, maybe 70%, and then the Dodrio that got printed on there is the other 30%. This is the first example I saw of this, but then I've seen other cards actually show up very recently. I think an error card group I'm in on Facebook, an example of this got showed as well. So these are kind of circulating a little bit, and these are just absolutely fascinating. Average non-error price is $1.62, and this card sold for $610 in auction, had 15 bidders, and that makes the error value increase 37,554%, which is obviously good enough for number one this week on our list of error value increases. All right, if you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate the absolute heck out of you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Take care.